After 4 years together, my fiancé told me, "You don't deserve to be my wife." I just laughed and left. But the day I married someone else, he completely collapsed. It was a quiet Thursday night, one of those evenings that feel heavy for no reason. The restaurant was dimly lit, the kind of place Adrian loved, elegant and silent enough to hear every clink of a glass. I thought it was just another dinner after a long week, but when he looked at me across the table, something in his eyes felt colder than usual. Distant, almost clinical. He had been checking his phone throughout dinner, sighing as if my presence bored him. I asked if everything was okay, and he said, without looking up, "We need to talk." My stomach sank. I'd heard those 4 words before, but not like this. Not from the man I had spent 4 years building a future with. Then he said it. "You don't deserve to be my wife." It wasn't loud or emotional, just factual, detached, like he was discussing a business deal. For a moment, I didn't move. The rain outside blurred the window, casting fractured reflections of the candlelight. I heard the waiter's soft footsteps, the hum of quiet conversations from nearby tables. The world kept spinning, even as mine stopped. "I'm sorry?" I asked, though I wasn't. I just wanted him to take it back. He didn't. "You're fine, Nora. You're kind, but you don't fit. My parents think you lack grace. You don't have the kind of background a wife of mine should have." I tried to overlook it, but it matters. The words landed like stones, heavy, deliberate, rehearsed. I realized then this wasn't sudden. He'd planned it. He'd invited me here to end us. I studied his face, the face I used to love. The one that smiled when I brought him coffee, the one that whispered plans for our honeymoon, the one that said, "forever." All gone. What stared back at me wasn't love. It was pity. For years, I'd tried to mold myself into the version of Nora he wanted, more polished, more refined, less ordinary. I'd changed how I dressed, what I ate, how I spoke. I had slowly chipped away pieces of myself, believing that love required transformation. But in that moment, all I felt was clarity. A strange, almost hysterical laugh escaped me. Quiet at first, then steadier. Adrian blinked, confused. "You're laughing?" he asked. "Yes," I said, voice steady. "Because you're right. I don't deserve to be your wife. I deserve to be with someone who's proud of me. Not ashamed." I took off the ring, the same ring I once thought symbolized forever, and placed it neatly beside his untouched glass of wine. "Good luck finding someone worthy enough for your parents," I whispered. Then I stood, picked up my coat, and walked out into the rain. The night air hit my face like a baptism, cold, sharp, real. For the first time in years, I wasn't the version of myself built to please him. I was just me. I walked for hours without a destination, heels clicking against wet pavement, mascara running down my cheeks. I didn't cry. Not really. The tears that fell were just water washing away the last pieces of someone I used to be. That night, I didn't lose everything. I reclaimed it. When I moved out that weekend, the apartment looked smaller than I remembered. It was as if every corner had been holding its breath, waiting for me to finally let go. I packed quietly, just a few boxes. My favorite coffee mug, the worn copy of The Little Prince Adrian once mocked me for keeping. The rest I left behind, 4 years of memories, and not one of them felt like home anymore. Nora, that was me, the woman who thought love meant sacrifice. At 29, I had already given up a career I loved to follow him. I used to work as a project designer for a small firm downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I was good at it. But when Adrian got promoted to a new branch across the city, he said, "It'd be easier if you took some time off. I'll handle everything. You can focus on us." And I believed him. I thought partnership meant compromise, that stepping back for a while didn't mean losing myself. But a while turned into months, then years. I became the one managing our home, our schedules, our dinners, our lives, while he chased bigger titles, shinier rooms, better circles. He loved the idea of being admired, the perfect man with the perfect fiancé. Only later did I realize I was just another reflection of his image. Adrian was everything my parents used to call a good catch. Polished, educated, a future CEO. But beneath the charm was a man constantly measuring worth. His, mine, everyone's, against an invisible ruler labeled status. His family lived in that same world of silent judgment. His mother, Veronica, was a walking magazine cover. Pearls, posture, and power. His father, Douglas, didn't speak much, but when he did, his words were gospel. I remember the dinner when I first met them. I was nervous, eager to impress. Veronica smiled and said, "So you're in design? How creative. I suppose you don't really need to work once you're married, do you?" Adrian had just laughed and changed the subject. I should have heard what wasn't said. They talked about charity galas, country clubs, investment portfolios, things I didn't understand and pretended to find fascinating. I laughed when I was supposed to. I nodded when I didn't agree, and each time, a little part of me shrank smaller. Over time, Adrian stopped introducing me as my fiancé Nora and started saying, "This is Nora. She's between jobs right now." Between jobs. Between versions of myself. Between pretending and existing. His mother would call and remind him, "Remember, reputation is everything. You need someone who elevates you, not someone people whisper about." He never defended me. He didn't have to. His silence said enough. By the time he told me, "You're not worthy of being my wife," it wasn't a spontaneous cruelty. It was the final act of a long performance I hadn't realized I'd been part of. That night, after I walked out, I drove to a small motel by the highway and sat there until morning. No tears, no music. Just silence and the dull hum of the air conditioner. It wasn't heartbreak. Not anymore. It was exhaustion. From trying to be enough. From mistaking endurance for love. The next morning, I texted him one last time. "I'll have the ring sent back. Don't worry. It won't ruin your reputation." Then I turned off my phone, walked out into the early light, and promised myself something simple but terrifying. I would never again let anyone decide my worth. The night I left, I thought Adrian would let me go in silence. He didn't. The next morning, there were 10 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and 1 long text that began with, "We can fix this if you just apologize." Apologize. For what? For not being enough to fit his mold? For not bowing to his family's expectations? I ignored him. By day 2, the tone shifted. "You're making a mistake. You'll never find someone who loves you like I did." By day 5, it turned bitter. "I can't believe I almost married someone like you." It was strange. How quickly love could turn into contempt once ego got bruised. I spent the first 2 weeks sleeping on a pull-out couch at my friend Clara's apartment. She didn't ask for details. She just made tea, sat beside me and said, "You don't owe anyone your silence or your suffering." For the first time in years, I felt seen. Meanwhile, Adrian began his campaign to save face. He couldn't stand the idea of being dumped. Among our mutual friends, he told a different version. That I'd had a breakdown, that I wasn't ready for the pressure of marriage. He even posted a smug quote on Instagram. "Some people aren't built for success, and that's okay." I didn't respond. I didn't block him either. I just stopped existing in the same digital world. My therapist, Dr. Hanley, was the first person to call it what it was: emotional manipulation. "He's rewriting the story so he doesn't have to face who he is," she said during our first session. "The only story you control now is your own." Therapy wasn't some cinematic breakthrough. It was small things. Learning to eat regularly again, to sleep without replaying every conversation, to look at my reflection without flinching. I wrote lists. Little ones: buy groceries, walk to the park, don't text him back. Every checkmark felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. 2 weeks became a month. By then, the tears had stopped coming. Not because I was healed, but because I was tired of bleeding over someone who wouldn't have noticed. Adrian tried one last time. He showed up at Clara's apartment, hair messy, voice trembling with self-pity. "I was under pressure," he said. "You know how my parents are. I didn't mean what I said." I looked at him and realized I wasn't angry anymore. Just empty. "I think you did mean it," I said softly. "You just didn't expect me to finally listen." His jaw tightened. He stepped closer, whispering, "You'll regret this, Nora. You're throwing away everything we built." I smiled. Not out of spite, but from clarity. "We didn't build anything. I just decorated the cage." He left, slamming the door. That was the last time I saw him for nearly a year. Those first 2 months were brutal. Long nights, long silences, and an endless battle with my own doubts. But beneath all that grief, something new was growing, a quiet defiance, a voice that no longer trembled when it spoke. I didn't know it yet, but the worst thing Adrian ever said to me had just become the beginning of the best thing I'd ever done for myself. 3 months after the breakup, I saw Adrian again, on Instagram. He was in Italy, smiling beside a blonde woman in a silk dress. The caption read, Finally found someone who understands my world. Her name was Chloe. She looked like she'd stepped out of a luxury ad. Tall, polished, a perfect reflection of the image Adrian always wanted to project. I stared at the photo for a full minute, then closed the app. For a few days, I tried to convince myself that I didn't care. But healing, I learned, isn't linear. It's 1,000 quiet moments of progress, interrupted by a single sharp sting. Dr. Hanley called it emotional detox. You spent years shaping yourself around someone who never saw you, she said during one session. Now you're relearning how to exist without seeking permission. So I learned small things. To eat alone in restaurants without feeling watched. To say no without apologizing. To stop checking if my phone would light up with his name. By month 4, I reconnected with Leah, my college roommate. She invited me to a small dinner with her friends. People who didn't know my history, who saw me as someone new. That's where I met Marcus. He wasn't the type of man who filled a room with charm. He was quiet, steady, with kind eyes and an easy laugh that didn't sound performative. When he asked what I did for work, he actually listened to the answer. I wasn't ready for anything serious, so I told him. I am still healing, I admitted. He smiled. Then let's walk, not run. We started with weekend coffee. Then hikes. Then lazy Sunday mornings where conversation flowed without expectation. Marcus never asked about Adrian. He never needed to compete with a ghost. By month 6, I noticed something new. Silence no longer felt like loneliness. Meanwhile, Adrian's perfect romance started to crack. Chloe's posts grew colder, fewer photos, captions about focusing on my goals. One night, Leah sent me a screenshot. Chloe had posted a quote. Sometimes the mask falls and you realize you've been dating the mirror of someone else's ego. I didn't laugh. I just felt relieved, not because he was hurting, but because I finally wasn't. Therapy sessions became less about pain and more about boundaries. I talked about what I wanted in a partner: respect, calmness, the freedom to be imperfect. You're not trying to prove your worth anymore, Dr. Hanley said one afternoon. You're simply living it. By month 9, Marcus and I had been quietly, comfortably together for 3 months. He met Leah and passed the unspoken test, the way a good man does, simply by being consistent. One evening, we were walking by the river, watching the lights shimmer on the water. Marcus squeezed my hand and said, "You look peaceful." I realized I was. Peace didn't come from revenge, or validation, or finding someone new. It came from learning that I could build a life that wasn't centered around being chosen. And for the first time in years, I wasn't surviving love. I was living it. By October, I had stopped keeping count of how long it had been since Adrian and I ended. What I did count were small things. How many sunsets Marcus and I watched from our balcony. How often I woke up without anxiety. How many mornings began with laughter instead of silence. When Marcus proposed, it wasn't elaborate, no audience, no fireworks. Just the two of us sitting on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket as autumn wind rustled the trees. He looked at me and said, "You've rebuilt everything, and I'd like to build the rest with you." I cried, but not from fear this time. From peace. By November, the wedding invitations were out. A cozy winter ceremony, family, close friends, a few people who had seen me at my worst and stayed. And then, the messages started. The first one came late at night. "Adrian, I just want closure. Please, can we talk once?" I didn't reply. A week later. "I heard you're getting married." "Congratulations, I guess. Do you ever think about what we had?" Marcus saw me staring at my phone and simply asked, "Do you want me to block him?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I need to know I can choose not to respond." But the texts didn't stop. They turned into calls. Dozens, then hundreds. I stopped answering unknown numbers. Marcus started holding my phone when I got anxious. On the morning of our wedding, my phone buzzed nonstop. 43 missed calls before noon. By the time I stepped into my dress, a simple satin gown, I designed myself. It was 177. 177 missed calls from the man who once said I wasn't worthy. Leah's eyes widened. "Do you want me to turn it off?" Marcus was calm. He took the phone from the table, looked at the screen lighting up again. Adrian calling. Then he answered. "This is her husband, Marcus," he said, voice steady and polite. "She's busy right now. Please don't call again." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't sound territorial. He just stated a fact, one that carried the weight of finality, and that was it. No more calls, no more messages. Adrian disappeared like a shadow that finally realized daylight wasn't his to touch. That night, as we danced under soft lights, Leah whispered, "That was the most elegant revenge I've ever seen." I smiled. It wasn't revenge. It was closure. On my terms. In that moment, surrounded by people who actually loved me, I understood something profound. Healing isn't about proving the past wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you deserved better all along. When Marcus and I left the venue, snowflakes began to fall. He looked at me, his arm around my shoulders, and said, "So, ready for forever?" I laughed softly. "Yeah, and this time I know I deserve it." A year passed faster than I thought it would. Life with Marcus settled into something warm and steady. Morning coffee in the kitchen we renovated together. Weekend hikes, laughter that didn't carry the weight of comparison. By the time spring turned to summer, we'd finally moved into our first house. The walls still smelled like fresh paint, and the front yard was filled with fairy lights for our housewarming party. Leah brought wine, Marcus grilled on the patio, and I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace that didn't need to be earned. Then, around 9 p.m., I heard someone call my name. Nora. I turned, and my stomach tightened. Adrian stood at the gate, swaying slightly, holding a half-empty bottle of scotch. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes red. For a moment, I thought he might have shown up by mistake. Marcus noticed the silence spreading through the crowd and stepped closer, but I gently placed a hand on his arm. "It's okay," I whispered. "Let me handle it." Adrian stumbled forward, raising his voice so everyone could hear. "She wouldn't even be here without me," he said, gesturing toward me with the bottle. "I made her who she is. She learned everything from me." The words hung in the air, absurd and pathetic all at once. Someone in the back murmured, "Is he serious?" Leah crossed her arms, her jaw tightening. I set down my glass, walked toward him, and stopped just a few feet away. "You think you made me?" I said quietly. He smirked, half drunk, half defensive. "Of course I did. I pushed you, made you stronger." I took a deep breath, then said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Worthy isn't something you earn from others. It's something you realize in yourself." The garden went silent. For a long second, even the music seemed to pause. Adrian blinked, as if the words didn't compute, then his shoulders slumped. He looked small, smaller than I'd ever seen him. Marcus moved forward, gently taking the bottle from his hand. "You should go home," he said, his voice firm but not cruel. Adrian muttered something under his breath, turned, and stumbled out through the gate. Leah appeared beside me, exhaling. "You handled that like a queen." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "No, just someone who's finally done defending her worth." Later that night, when everyone had gone and the house grew quiet, Leah texted me a message. "By the way, heard from a friend that Chloe's married now, and she's pregnant. Adrian's been a wreck for months." I stared at the screen for a long while, then put the phone down and smiled faintly. He used to say I'd never find happiness without him. But maybe it was the other way around. Maybe he never learned how to live without needing someone to validate him. Marcus came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "What's on your mind?" he asked. "Nothing," I said softly, just realizing how good it feels not to look back. 2 years after the night that changed everything, life had settled into a rhythm I once thought I'd never have again. Marcus and I had a little girl now, Emma. She had his dimples and my stubborn curls, and somehow she laughed with her whole body. Our mornings were filled with the chaos of spilled cereal and soft lullabies playing in the background. I used to wake up wondering how I'd survive another day of pretending I was happy. Now I woke up wondering how I got so lucky. Sometimes when Emma napped, I'd sit by the window and think about how far I'd come. Not with bitterness, but with gratitude. It wasn't about proving Adrian wrong anymore. It never really was. It was about proving to myself that I was never broken in the first place. I started volunteering at a women's center on weekends, meeting people who reminded me of who I once was. Scared, unsure, desperate to be enough. I told them what therapy had taught me, what life had shown me, that self-worth isn't something someone can give or take away. It's something you build, moment by moment, when you choose yourself. One afternoon, Leah dropped by with coffee and old photos. We laughed at the memories, the bad haircuts, the awkward engagements, the dresses that didn't fit. She paused at a picture of me from years ago, standing next to Adrian, smiling with that polite, anxious smile I used to wear. "Do you ever think about him?" she asked. I shrugged, smiling faintly. Sometimes. But not the way I used to. I don't hate him anymore. I just don't care. And that's freedom. She nodded. You found your peace. I looked toward the living room, where Marcus was playing with Emma, both of them laughing as he tried to braid her tiny pigtails. My peace found me, I said softly. That night, after Emma fell asleep, Marcus and I sat outside under the porch lights. The air smelled like rain and jasmine. He squeezed my hand, the same way he did on our wedding day. You know, I said, watching the light flicker in his eyes, I used to think love was about proving your worth being chosen. He smiled. And now? Now I know love is about never having to question it. He leaned in and kissed my forehead. Then we're doing it right. I smiled, resting my head on his shoulder as the night hummed softly around us. Maybe that's the thing about healing. It doesn't come with fireworks or revenge or grand closure. It comes quietly, when you finally stop chasing validation and start living your truth. In the closing line of my story, if I were to write it down, I'd say this: worthiness isn't something you earn by changing yourself to please someone else. It's something you realize when you're with people who never make you doubt it. And as I watched my husband sleeping beside me later that night, I whispered a quiet thank you. Not to him, not even to life, but to myself. Because I finally understood that peace isn't given. It's claimed.